welcome to the Dani Ariza podcast. This is officially, I would say, the second season.
Second season, okay.
Second season, because if you can call the first season a season, because we had maybe like 3-4 episodes.
It was like a promo.
It was a promo. It was a
trial run.
A trial
Yeah,
run.
exactly.
Yeah. Learned a lot of things. Number one is that it's
Probationary.
it's hard to put together all this stuff. But anyway, just a quick intro. This is Dani Ariza. I am the host, and I'm a loan officer with Animac Home Mortgage. And today we are talking to my partner.
Yep. Scott Cummings, also with Annie Mac.
Yeah. And then Mr.
Matthew Dank, attorney up in the northern part of New Jersey and New York.
Yeah. And
William Kwong, realtor with the Align team at eXp Realty,
cool.
covering North Jersey.
Nice.
Yeah. So the one reason I wanted to do this podcast today was because I am personally going through. I'm noticing that it's amazing how even after 3 years of interest rates being so high, like 2022 March 2022, that's when interest rates boom. And at least here in northern New Jersey, like we're still having bidding wars. And I mean, last night I put an offer with a client for up in Westwood, $110,000 our asking price. I don't know if it's gonna get accepted or not.
Might not be enough.
Yeah, it might not be enough. It's like ridiculous, honestly. And so I wanted to bring you guys in and just kind of like, just first of all to you, Bill, is like, what are you doing to get these? How are you navigating these? And also to Matt is like, obviously when this bidding war starts, like a lot of buyers just give up everything when it comes to attorney review. And is that a good idea, or what should you do? So I'll start with Bill. Like, what are your thoughts about this, and how are you navigating this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So like, just some of my experiences in the past, like more recently in the last 2 months, I actually try to find the time to go to the open houses with my buyer to try to build as much rapport as I can with the seller's agent, because I think it makes a difference just to the standpoint that you're showing up. You're definitely right. You have to go over the asking price significantly. Like the two things we always do, which is like a set standard, is waiving appraisal to a certain degree and then limiting inspections. But I'm only limiting inspections based on what I see when I'm actually at the property. So if I know there's approval stickers for 2024 for an HVAC system, I think the mechanical is going to be all right. Looking at the seller's disclosure, making sure that we're crossing our T's, dotting our I's kind of thing. I'm not a structural engineer, but kind of diving into the structural aspect. If I see a lot of sagging with the floors or vertical cracks in the foundation, obviously structural and environmental are key components when putting in offers. So from those two perspectives, those are the most important things aside from price. But yeah, it's definitely kind of like a crapshoot sometimes, because I have a lot of people I'm either up against cash or 50% down.
Do you think down payment has something to do with it, though?
To a degree, yeah, it shows financial stability. If my offer is the same exact offer as someone else, but they're 20% down and I'm 10% down, that's why I try to build the rapport aspect into it and constantly follow up to show that I'm serious versus just sending an email and not even calling the realtor to confirm receipt that I sent an offer.
Right.
So all these things are great, but at the end of the day, it's still, like you said, it's a difficult market in times like this.
Yeah, no, because I feel we lost an offer a couple of weeks ago and it was $85,000 over asking price. I personally called the listing agent. I was like, look, we got this. I mean, this is as solid as possible. This is a dentist. And I guess somebody just came in way over, and then, the question, a conversation with the agent as well as the buyer was, should we waive everything? And it's, that's kind of at least for me, it's always tough to, I don't feel comfortable enough to tell somebody, hey, just waive absolutely everything, even though that might be what gets in the deal, that gets you in the door. But how does it work with those, we know, let's say the whole inspection, because I think that's the biggest one for me. It's it's the what if something comes up?
Yeah, I mean, you have to always maintain at least some modicum of protection for your client. You can't just, when I see waive everything, unless the person has an obscene amount of money, they know it's a new build with, again, all the stickers, all the protocol in place. I think it's a foolish thing to do. These days, again, the contracts I see coming in, they still have the major structural environmental systems in place. So you have a way to get out of the transaction if you have to with the inspection. But I never really view, total waiver as a smart thing to do, unless you just have so much money, or you're tearing down the house, or you're doing so many renovations that you don't really care what it looks like on the inside.
I was just going to say, it's also important to note, I think, for buyers that when you say you're fully waiving inspections, though, too, that means you can't go back for anything, correct?
That is correct. And I have a transaction right now where the offer was made, they waived no contingencies, waiving everything. Mm-hmm. The attorney contacts me, hey, can we put in major structural environmental? And I said, we took your offer because it was waiving everything.
Correct.
So I said, you can have, I know the other attorney, and that goes a long way, knowing the other person, whether it's agent knows agent, attorney knows attorney, attorney knows agent, whatever it might be. That makes a lot of deals smoother when you have that relationship and rapport. They came back with closet issues and things like that. And I have to, kind of not puff my chest out, but say, is that a major issue? Having a closet not on a track. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you get a little bit silly sometimes when, somebody makes an offer and they want to change it in AR. I've always made it, kind of a, focus of my practice and way I want to do things is don't change material things in AR. Yeah. That's just, it's dishonest. It's, not really the right way of doing things. They took your offer because you represented one thing. If somehow the offer went in and the agent screwed the pooch on it, pardon my French, and they did waive everything and the clients didn't know, because I've seen it where the clients didn't know what they were waiving, then you have to go and protect them as much as possible. But, that's very far and few between that the client is unaware they're waiving everything and they waive everything.
Yeah. I mean, I think it just, honestly, it's such a bad idea to push some of these clients to waive everything. Yeah. If they truly don't understand, especially if they're first time home buyers. Yeah. Because, it's such a, we see it all the time where it's like people go in and they're scared. Even though they have pretty good money, they're professionals, they know about different things, but this is the first time they're buying a house and they're like, what if there's oh, I saw a crack. Yeah.
What's that crack mean? Is it horizontal, vertical? Is it structural or settling? What does it mean?
100%. And I think when I coach my clients too, before we submit an offer, especially if they're first time home buyers, those two terms and conditions are the most important thing, kind of what we're talking about right now. And I always kind of fall back and say, look, we always do a full blown inspection, but in terms of limiting what we can request credits for us is structural or environmental or whatever I see, depending upon the house, case by case basis.
Yeah. I think one of the things that Matt touched on before, that I think we all collectively do a good job with, me and Bill work very closely together, me and Matt, I know you work with Matt as well. And then there's that team aspect that Matt mentioned before. I think that also goes a long way. The more people that know each other in the transaction on both sides, attorneys have relationships, realtors have relationships. I'm always trying to cultivate, relationships with the listing agent, just because I think the major message we try and get across is that we all have the same goal in mind. Yeah. We have somebody that wants to buy, you have somebody that wants to sell. Nobody's interested in killing deals here, and you want to kind of ensure that if we do go into a relationship under contract together, ultimately this will get to the closing table. So biggest thing I think Bill does a really good job of too is kind of getting the whole team involved. If he comes across a client being like, hey, you could use whoever you want, but I really trust I trust Scott at Annie Mac, so I'd encourage you to have a conversation with him first. And it kind of helps us be able to bounce ideas and strengthen offers any way possible.
And just to jump in, now that you mentioned that, a lot of people just don't realize, how important the reputation of the banker is when it comes to these transactions. It's you're looking to differentiate your offer from, sometimes 30, 40 people. And it's everyone says, oh, yeah, what does it mean? I know you'll close, right? Yeah. But a lot of times it's there's so many people out there that shady people in this business that having a good banker, a good mortgage loan officer behind the transaction is going to make a big difference. I mean, I think we had that situation what was it, October?
Yeah, in October.
Yeah.
And that's what got us, where we needed to be.
Yeah,
and it was nice.
Yeah, it's just and basically just to recap, we had a situation where it was like, there was a ton of offers on that.
Yeah.
And then
We got kicked and then we got back in, and it was because the team aspect that got done quickly, efficiently, and closed at exactly on time.
Actually.
Yeah.
And so it was great.
Yeah, we had a transaction in Wen where basically the leasing agent, right? She's pretty big.
Yeah.
And she was like, she didn't click with the buyer's agent.
Yeah.
And they were going back and forth, and then you stepped in.
Yeah.
And because of that, you basically say, hey, we have this team, this guy's gonna close it.
Yeah.
Actually, we closed it it was like 11 days, something stupid.
It was really, really, really fast. Yeah. And it was good. It was good reputation, and people know you that you're going to get it done and do everything you can. I think people don't hold you accountable if you say you're going to try to get it done and you show best efforts. I think that's really the most important thing, is that as long as everybody shows best efforts to try to get it done and do the right thing, people are usually not pigs about it, especially, again, whether it's inspection or getting a mortgage, extension, whatever, wherever that is. You're trying.
Yeah,
you're not, there's no dead air in the conversation, and I think that's important.
I think even with like dates on a contract too, right? If earnest money deposit is due 5 days after attorney review concludes, if you're going 6 days, but there's been communication, usually you're not trying to blow up a deal over something silly like that.
No.
Yeah. No, that's the other thing. Sometimes you'll have people that just completely disappear.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. But
the banking thing is super important though, having like a reliable mortgage company, because like real estate's like a small knit group, like you see the same faces pretty much everywhere. So even when I'm a listing agent and I'm reviewing multiple offers, I'll see just like a random
Bank of Omaha
that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
But even Wells Fargo, you see that, you get scared of Wells Fargo because you know that they are difficult.
100%.
Sorry, Wells Fargo.
And there's like something to be said for sure, just like, oh, like I know that loan officer, I know that company.
Or at least maybe you don't know him, but you know the reputation.
I know the reputation.
You might see somebody and be like, oh, I know that guy's capable. I follow him on Instagram or something.
Right.
So to your point, it's a small industry.
For sure. Like Hudson County specifically, it's like a very close group of people. Everybody uses the same realtors, like the same loan officers and things like that. So like when they see your guys' faces or your guys' names on the contract, like they get way more comfortable. They're like, oh, we can get out of attorney review in 24 hours. Like this is good. Like I know this loan officer, he's going to do a good job, reputable company. So like the team is really important,
100%.
especially like the local individuals.
Yeah, and then just picking up the phone. I know you always call your listed, the listing agents, but just picking up the phone is such an important thing, because people know that, hey, I talked to that guy. He gave me a word, Yeah.
And I also think too, like I would say 95% of my business is obviously in North Jersey. We're capable of several different states, and we'll do a fine job in other states too. But when we have our pre-approvals that say we're in East Rutherford, we're a brick and mortar too, that you could come knock on our door if you feel like you're not able to get in touch with us too. As opposed to sometimes, these bigger companies, you might be dealing with one person, but his team is also in Ohio and his underwriters in California. So it's all kind of jacked up. They don't even know each other, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Those banks, online banks, really. It's kind of like, there's really no, like nobody really takes responsibility of the transaction.
And it's like 18 different people you're dealing with. And it's like, who am I dealing with? Like, can you give me one person instead of 30?
And I can't call them after 5 p.m.
That's the other thing. I tell people, hey, you can text me anytime. Sometimes I'm not going to answer, but listen, it's I know you had a bunch of these situations where we're like, hey, we need to get on the phone at 10 p.m. And obviously I don't promote it.
Try and do it sparingly.
My wife is not going to be happy about that. But it's sometimes that's what it has to be done in order to get something, something put through. So, Matt, so let me ask you, like, what happens in the situation where, like, something comes out of left, like, like, for example, something huge comes out in the inspection and you actually waived it. Like, let's say you waived, I don't know, an environmental,
And
which is a
sellers want
stupid
out
thing.
now.
Right. And you have a termite issue, or you have a massive mold issue. Again, depending on what the relationship with the other side is, it really will determine if they'll do it. I've seen it with radon. People have waived everything. Radon comes back at 10. Seller's like, I'm not going to have you move into a house that can kill you.
Like you're a human.
That depends on the humanity of it. That's why it's good to often have that that relationship. you know, if you're doing a bank-owned property sale, and a lot of times you can't get anything, bank wants it to close. They don't want to hold this property. If they see something that's legitimate, we just had it with a septic situation, they give us the money.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you can kind of plead and say, this is a little bit absurd. You know, you're going to make somebody buy a house with, you know, $200,000 in structural issues. We understand what they signed for, but you try to work it out. Usually what you try to do.
And do you feel that's successful?
9 times out of 10.
In most
it's
cases.
very rare that somebody's going to go and...
So with that, do you ever explain that to a client maybe up front to also let them know that you'll still have their best interest in mind if something drastic comes up on the inspection? Or do you even try and urge against it from the start of like fully waiving everything?
I always try to urge against waiving. I mean, I had an appraisal situation yesterday where we had our appraisal language. There's no realtors, so it's just our contract. And, you know, the seller's attorney changed it to the appraisal only if it affects getting the loan. Will the appraisal come into effect? And I told my clients, I said, you know, you might be out X amount of money or whatever it is. And they said, that's fine. It's so competitive. They understand that. And they know it may underappraise by $50,000, $60,000. They're okay with it. Okay. And in multiple times, are you sure? Yes, we're okay with it. Okay. We're happy to get this house. It's hard to get in this area. We'll go over if we have to go over.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was actually going to kind of come back to Bill as a way to kind of showcase your abilities too, because we were saying it's a competitive market. Is there anything that you do like with off-market stuff, or is there any way that you could kind of showcase your abilities that like it's different working with you versus a different realtor?
Yeah, so I'll say like at least the line team, right, from the off-market standpoint, like we're over like 70 agents in New Jersey. Like we literally have like our own Slack channel where we like upload upcoming like listings almost on the daily, which is nice. Typically we're mostly in North Jersey, and I think we have an office down in Red Bank as well. And we're in some other states, but like New Jersey's obviously only applicable to me. But from that perspective, yeah, I mean, we definitely get off-market stuff. Right now, I know like inventory is super dry, but things are still coming across, and we're like making deals happen, like exclusive listings, which is a nice added bonus. We do a lot of marketing campaigns too. So like I'll send golden letters, basically like not with their pre-approval, but hey, my buyers just lost out on 123 Main Street. Would you be considered, or would you be interested in considering an offer from us if the numbers made sense?
Okay. And do you feel like that's a big value add for your clients probably?
Yeah, I think so. So like once we do the letter, like we have some ISAs, and like myself personally, like I'll pull some phone numbers if they're not on the DNC list, and I'll just give them a call to follow up and like maybe do a second mailer as well. So like get a lot of nurtures, and worst case, if it even doesn't work for the buyer, it's just, it'll work for another buyer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because I in going back to the line team, because I mean they have a great reputation. Like, so like what was the advantage of you joining them? Like,
yeah, it's a good question. So like we have 33 employees, like paid employees, to just kind of help take the load off, because like you guys are all in your own business, you know, run your own business. You wear every single hat in your business, so it's really tough. My job is just to talk to people and go on appointments, you know, but then I have to be the social media guy. I have to be the content creator. I have to be the transaction guy as well. It's just like so much to do, where I'm like not being able to serve my clients or not being able to grow. So with them, all the systems in place, like it's been pretty good so far.
Yeah. You know, I think that's such a big thing nowadays in real estate, because I mean that our industry, like, it's just basically a bunch of small businesses. It's really that's how it is. And then you know, at least for us, when we tell a loan officer out there who's thinking about moving, it's like, hey, you're gonna have the support, because that's a big thing. And also when it comes back to us working in, you know, making offers and working for the client, it's always a team.
Yeah.
So yeah.
One of the big things that I think you could probably touch on pretty well is different types of products too that we can offer that might be also a difference maker in being able to get an offer accepted. I know you're pretty familiar with the non-QM space. And what I've learned recently is I've actually had a couple deals that I've been able to close because, you know, the client says, oh, well, I was speaking with so-and-so and they said they can't do anything. And what I'm also learning too is that the non-QM loans are great alternatives. Some people just either don't want to do them or not confident and comfortable with them. I know that you really are. And I think that could be the difference maker too for a lot of people that otherwise don't qualify traditionally.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for those who don't know, basically, you know, you'll have your FHA, your conventional, VA, USDA, those kind of government loans or somewhat backed by the government. And then you're going to have what's called non-QM, which is non-qualified mortgages. These are mortgages that are basically, they're like private banks.
Wall Street.
Yeah, Wall Street. Yeah, basically you have like Goldman Sachs, just backing, buying a lot of these loans, or even Chase. I heard that they're doing a lot of those lately. So these loans tend to be a lot more complex than a regular loan because there's really, the rules are whatever the bank wants, They do follow up to a certain point, like Fannie and Freddie, but they're a great alternative to solving, problems that just sometimes they come up, Like, for example, like if you're buying a condo, like, I know you do a lot in Hoboken and all of that, like certain condos are non-warrantable, meaning that Fannie or Freddie do not approve, they don't approve the complex, the building itself, because of whatever
Insurance
reason.
issues or whatever.
Insurance,
Litigation,
finances,
right,
like, it's sometimes really small stuff. So then using a non-QM loan is going to, those banks don't follow those rules. So they're going to go ahead and say, okay, yes, we can give the loan for this.
And I think also commenting that those products are still deals that are good paper deals. They just don't qualify on the normal set standards by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or our government. Bank statement loans being another one.
Yeah.
Self-employed individual maybe putting $1 million into their business account throughout the year, but after all their expenses throughout the year, maybe they're only showing $70,000, $75,000, $100,000 of actual net income. We'll use the deposits from the business bank statements and qualify them based on that true income.
Yeah. I mean, I think the bigger point is that, everyone just gets stuck into this idea of like, hey, there's only two types of loans. It's like a FHA convention only. That's what people know. And they don't, when clients, even when agents like send their clients to loan officers, the loan officers, I mean, for lack of a better word, they're just lazy.
Could be.
Yeah, a lot of people are just lazy, or they just don't know. And they go like, oh, this doesn't work, and then I'll just move it. And they don't sit down and say, okay, what are the different options? Because non-QM, yes, and in many instances is more expensive, but sometimes it's just basically exactly the same. So, or sometimes, like, I'll give an example. Just, last week, had a client come in. She went to got an offer accepted. The other person, the loan officer, basically told her, here's a bank statement program. We're gonna use it. It's 9.5%. Now the closing costs and everything, pretty high, and you're like, okay, you know what? Let's see what we're actually dealing with. So sat down with the client, went through the numbers, and she has a business that's making over $1 million in revenue. She makes a lot more than what it shows in the taxes, just for, accountants, that's what they do. They basically try to deduct everything. So, the question was like, hey, does it make sense for her to show more in the taxes for 2024 and qualify for this house using a conventional mortgage? Or should we just go ahead and pursue the bank statement? Something that takes a couple hours to do, but basically we realized that it makes sense for her to actually pay more in taxes right away, get a rate of 6.5 as opposed to 9.5, and then have those taxes that if for some reason, like technically she can use those taxes until October next year to refinance if the rates come down lower, but at least, she's saving $1,300 a month.
That's a lot.
And then what she was going to pay in closing costs for the bank statement loan
Pays for the taxes.
So it's like, okay, now you set yourself up for a good, this is a good solution for the future. And you actually, you're just not wasting money, because the other way you would have to go back.
Yeah. Well, I think too, a lot of like the non-QM loans, they're investor-backed loans, so they're usually underwritten by investors, and a lot of times there's back and forth, and it makes for a less than smooth transaction. So I think a lot of loan officers too are afraid of even doing those because they want to appear like they're the experts, or they're afraid to kind of figure it out, so to speak. But if you're very honest with the clients, they really just want the house. So if you say, hey, listen, I haven't done one of these in a little while, we're going to get to the closing table, but it might be like less than perfect. They're still going to be happy when all said and done. 100%.
Yeah. And you know what? The other thing too is that you got to talk to your partners for these transactions. They tend to take I mean, it could go very fast, but if sometimes, things come out of nowhere, then they take a while, and then it's when you gotta talk to your attorney and be like, hey, this is what we're doing, this is why I need you to
We
go
need 2 more weeks, 3 more weeks, another month. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bill, if you're, and not to change the subject, but to kind of re-engage you, if you're a listing agent, right?
Yeah.
And you come across something like a pre-approval that says a bank statement loan, at a glance, do you think most agents even know what that means?
Probably not.
Okay.
No.
Do you think, do you think that a listing agent, if they don't know what it means, they're just not inclined to even really present it to they have to present it to their sellers, but they're not going to be fighting for you, right?
Probably not. I mean, it all depends how diligent like the agent is, and
Or the lender, right?
or the lender. So it's good that we have you guys, because I know you guys always call, kind of like as soon as I submit an offer, you're like, yo, Bill, do you want me to like make a phone call? And I'm like, yeah, like, kind of sell yourself.
Yeah.
But so it's good like having you guys on board to just help ease that burden from the unknown in the event that they don't know. But if I'm the listing agent and hypothetically I didn't know, I probably would have called
A good
the
listing
loan
agent
officer.
should, right?
I call all the loan officers.
Yeah.
I obviously can't ask them like, hey, are they like financially good? Like they can't tell me, but just kind of
Send me their
ask,
tax
like,
return.
Can you send me the buyer's tax return? But yeah, just kind of asking different probing questions, make sure they're, the loan is good and financially they're strong. Just things of that nature. See how they are, see how they work, because
Gotcha.
who you work with matters,
Yeah.
whether it's on your side or the other side.
For sure.
Yeah. So, question for Matt. So, sometimes in these situations, doing these loans, I mean, I've had situations where like basically we'll start, something comes up, and then we miss the deadline. Let's say it's supposed to close Friday, and then for some reason, because these people, the way it works with these banks is that sometimes they get very busy, so it takes a few more days to close. How do you handle that? Like, what's the...
I mean, technically you'll have TOE. So theoretically, if you have a closing date and you miss that closing date, either party may issue time of the essence, which is realistically in New Jersey, 10 days. We usually give 14. So 10 business days, 14 total days. New York is a 30-day cure period with then the 10 days. So I learned TOE in New York is about 40 days, a lot longer.
Wow.
But usually people don't go and pull the trigger on TOE if you don't close on the exact date. They give you a little bit of grace. Hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Fix this, get it done. And if you don't really have a good answer, maybe a week later, 5 days later, go issue TOE. The bigger issue is when you have like a domino effect of buyer buying, selling, like 5 transactions all contingent, and that's when somebody gets agitated. But that's where having an agent, an attorney, lenders explain to people there's 5 contingent transactions happening at one time. All it takes is one transaction to have a little hiccup, which is a high likelihood. Be prepared. Don't go crazy, don't yell, don't scream. It's what's going to happen. Normal transaction where it's buyer seller, someone's moving down to Florida, people usually give you grace, but you have the 14 days.
Yeah, no, because that's I again, I go back to the point, like a lot of people just disappear.
Yeah.
I think like communication is like super important. It's like, hey, full transparency. We're looking to close 3 days later. It's just like, it's the easiest. Communication is the easiest thing to do, but it's what people lack the most.
Yeah.
So I'm just sorry to jump in, but I had the situation the other way around where, this one I actually don't know the answer, but it's like, so what happens? We had a situation where this lady, we tend to work really fast with Animac. We tend to, get clear to close in like less than 2 weeks. Because we do a lot of our work beforehand. So we had this client where like they were supposed to close in a month. We got it clear to close in 2 weeks, and then we just waited, right? Somehow the seller just had some type of issue with the wife.
Yeah.
Where like basically they couldn't close for another 2 months.
Yep.
And this lady, unfortunately, had already moved out of her house and everything. Like, what is the remedy for
I've seen it. There's a lot of divorces right now. There are a lot of estate sales right now. With divorces, if it was kind of a sudden change, was there any, premonition or, previous, warning that was going to happen?
Writings on the wall.
Was writing on the wall? Because normally we go into a transaction, they're like, hey, there's a contentious divorce going on. Prepare the other side. If I'm on the seller side, hey, guys, They don't talk.
Yeah.
We have 3 other attorneys we're dealing with right now. We're going to aim for the target date. Don't hold me to it. If I'm on the buyer side, then I just want to have that information. And I've had it where a closing's gone a month and a half on. You know, if where's the person living? Are they living in a hotel? Are they moving with in-laws, siblings? I mean, what are their costs? So I think once you start experiencing, you know, what their actual out-of-pocket expenses are, their costs are, their damages are, you try to talk to the other side and say, listen, my client's really kind of, you know, in deep, you know what here, they're spending $300 a day just to live in a hotel. What can you guys do for us? And you hopefully get something. And a lot of times they'll say, listen, it's a contentious divorce or there's a problem.
But there's no way to force them, right? Unfortunately.
You can serve them TOA. And then good luck trying to get it resolved.
Serving TOE to a seller, though, when you have a home that you want to buy doesn't really help.
Yeah.
It does. You can still win. It's harder. It's a more of an uphill battle, but you can show damages.
Well, I think,
but we have a transaction right now. Seller, we have buyers. Seller passed away.
Oh yeah.
And now we're waiting months.
2 months.
2 months, because the estate. What are we going to say? Do it faster.
Hurry up. Yeah.
You can't control the county, and if someone passed away, you have to be a human being. You know, be understanding.
So,
and we are, which is nice. This is a good group of people. So.
We're good human beings. But have you seen, I mean, I feel like I haven't heard that much, but is it common to see people suing each other?
One attorney I work with up in this area, he told me, this was like a year ago, he had 7 transactions in litigation.
Wow.
Most he's ever had. And he's been doing this longer than me, about another 20 years longer than me. I've been doing it 18 years. People don't want, I mean, the suing, the problem is for the seller, people want homes so badly that right now it's, you know, it's, when you're doing like a single family, like people want them, they're going to be able to sell it to somebody else. Hopefully there's minimal damages. For buyers, it's a little bit harder because there's not that much inventory.
They work so hard to get that offer accepted.
Yeah. But again, you try to be prepared if something's going to look a little bit sketchy and just, you know, communicate with your clients.
I think to that point too, the one thing that I always jokingly say to clients is like, please don't hire movers until like the day after you close. Because I've had people yell at me, the moving truck is coming tomorrow. It's like, well, who told you to hire them then? You know? Yeah. So it's very much so that getting towards the end of a closing date, everybody kind of just needs to be flexible. It's like, hey, listen, we're going to close sometime next week. You know, it's still up in the air. We don't know when the sellers are ready. There's about 9 or 10 parties that all kind of need to be aligned and ready to go. So you need to be malleable in that sense. But yeah, there's got to be flexibility when you're making a big purchase. And
it depends on how old the people are, what kind of clients you have. I mean, I had clients in New York who they were moving out of the home at 2 a.m. after the closing. They still didn't get their stuff out, and they had a lot of time to be ready to get out, but they just didn't do it. And so we kind of knew going into it was going to be a problem, and you know, it got resolved, got closed. You know, minimal cost to them in this, you know, for a garbage pickup and whatnot. Yeah. But you know,
a lot of cooks in the kitchen, man.
Yeah. So now on the other side, so you know, have a client that all of a sudden decides, and just want to walk away from this transaction.
I had a cash deal 3 days before closing. Oof. Tell me that.
Yeah.
And they said, we just don't want it anymore. Why? We just don't want it. I said, well, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And luckily the attorney on the other side, this guy from Staten Island, was like, what's bad karma if we kept your deposit? I'm like, you have an open shot at the quarterback right now. Mm-hmm. I appreciate you not wanting to go after my client. He's like, no. He's like, get the deposit back. And he gave it back. They sold it. They turned around and sold it for more money. Mm-hmm. They were fine with it. But you have people who just want to walk away, and you have to explain in the beginning, your outs are inspection, mortgage, title. You know, these are the things you can walk away for. You can't walk away because you don't feel like it anymore.
Yeah.
Changing circumstances, you know.
Yeah, that's
I actually have a question for the two of you, because we're not really even supposed to be involved in this. Going back to one of the other ways to amplify getting your offer accepted and needing the little bit of time in between buying and selling for the sellers, use and occupancies. Do you recommend them? Do you think that they're good? What's that?
Everybody hates them. I think everybody hates them.
Do you think? I think they're necessary in a lot of cases, right?
Yeah.
Because as a bank, like we always tell people, like, hey, we don't want to know. It's if you're buying the home, we just want you to move in as soon as you possibly can. Like, we don't want to know if the sellers are going to be living there for another 60 to 90 days. Like, then it gets into a whole big thing with us.
Usually they're no issue.
Okay.
But when there's an issue, it can be.
And do you even want to maybe explain to people what a use and occupancy is?
Do you want to? Or I'm going to.
Yeah. So use and occupancy is essentially a leaseback period. If it's an owner-occupied loan, as you guys know, it can't be more than 59 days because they have to occupy the property
For us.
for you guys. It's essentially like it becomes a landlord-tenant thing temporarily, where the seller becomes the tenant to the new buyer.
So buyers take ownership and then still give them another week, 2 weeks, month, whatever it takes for them to get their stuff out and move out, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we agree upon terms in terms of like a rental amount based on market value rent. Utilities are taken into account. We hold money in escrow, right? And then we do another final walkthrough, or maybe we just do one walkthrough once
At
they
that
leave,
time.
just to make sure that, you know, they're not putting holes in the wall or like taking the stove with them. When it
What
wasn't
happens
in
if
the
that does
contract.
happen?
I had it where the seller was hiding a massive hole behind a bed. And when the bed came out and my client went to do their final walk, they're like, there's a hole. Big.
Yeah.
Like
sheetrock needs to be replaced.
you can fit humans in there, right? Not small.
Maybe they had humans in
maybe
there.
they were.
Yeah, that was it.
And I get a response from the other attorney. Oh, it was there during the inspection. And I said, well, when you have a bed with a headboard blocking it, sure, it was probably there during the inspection, but we couldn't see it. They gave us $1,000, which was more than enough. And, you know, it's fine. But it was kind of like, yeah, no, I'm sure it was there during the inspection, but we couldn't see it because you were blocking it.
And I would assume that ideally you probably don't recommend them because it's like, hey, you're the legal owner of the home already. So really, if they told you, hey, listen, we don't care, then at the end of the day, you assume responsibility for whatever the issues are post-closing.
Yeah, but you hold an escrow, you know, $5,000,
Sure.
whatever it might be, you know, $3,000,
And again,
it's sufficient.
pretending we're not lenders and we don't know this, what's the longest like use and occupancy you've seen?
I've done like almost 60 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt's like, I don't know, a year.
Yeah, you've probably done way longer.
120, yeah.
Yeah.
Like 4 months.
Okay. And why was that? Did the sellers need to move or?
It was just they needed to move. There was a lot of things going on. The buyers needed time to even get to where they were going. So no one was in a rush.
Got it.
No one was in a rush. And so it just ended up being, but that was like during peak COVID when people were giving away like, oh, your septic failed. We'll take the property anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
It was Wild West then. A little bit less now, but
it's a little bit crazy because, you know, I mean, as far as I know, in New Jersey, you don't need an attorney for a real estate transaction, right?
no. And I have like 3 deals right now where the other side does not have an attorney, and it's costing them. It's costing them because they're just doing things and offering things that if they had an attorney, I would not be offering, and it's well exceeding the cost of an attorney.
You know, it's it just, I guess it goes for everything in real estate, in a real estate transaction. A lot of people want to save money and they want to save like $1,000 or $2,000, and it end up costing them more because there's so many issues that can come up, you know.
Yeah, especially inspections. I mean, I feel bad, but often we beat up on if the seller is not having representation and there's an inspection issue, we can often, I don't want to say beat them up on it, but you can really go and hammer and say, do you want this or not want this? And you have to go relist it. You're going to be paying another mortgage, more taxes, everything else. One thing I did want to mention is I have a bunch of transactions where they're putting the buyer to get the CO. And the issue is, like, just as a warning, is depends on where you're getting the CO. Like we have one in Irvington, one in East Orange right now, and they're just notoriously difficult cities. Cities in general, cities, Clifton, doesn't matter. It's really hard, and they don't make it easy. And our one closing is going to be delayed because the city didn't come out.
Really?
We're yelling at the seller because they had to coordinate one part of it, but they're like, we've contacted them. Really hard. So just be wary if buyer has to get the CO. We always highly recommend against that because it's a pain in the butt.
Is it more difficult for the buyer to get it than the seller though?
No, it's just you're adding responsibility to the buyer. It's not.
Okay,
It's not.
I
You know,
got
as we know, CO is the job of the seller, and
Right, correct.
They know. They usually know that there's infractions when they want the buyer to do it because they know there's going to be costs. You know, and you have an out. If it exceeds $1,000, buyer can walk away. But
Sure.
like, it's a pain.
I mean, some of these, I have to say, in East Orange, 2 or 3 transactions already. I mean, they are not easy to keep the CEO, and they are extremely like strict about it. So like if you go, like they'll send. I mean, this thing is like a full blown inspection.
It is.
And once you go in without the CEO, then you're screwed because I mean,
you start accruing $250 a day. So we had somebody who the seller's supposed to get the CO. They said they got it, never got it. It was $2,000. Seller paid the $2,000 of fines because our client had to move in. They East Orange does cap it at $2,000.
Yeah.
So we were worried because theoretically it was like $7,500 if you go by the per day, but it was they capped it at $2,000 because I don't think they want to be total, you know what?
Yeah, I think with East Orange, like whenever you try to get a CO inspection done, they just give you an 11-page document of everything that you need to fix. And by the time you fixed all that, the house was actually worth like 60 grand more. So I wouldn't have priced it like that had I known I had to fix it. So people just end up paying the fine and just kind of leaving it with the town.
Yeah, this Thursday we have the whatchamacallit. Yeah, we have the list coming from the town. So we're waiting to see what it is, and our closing is supposed to be Friday. Cannot happen.
Yeah.
Not possible.
I think it's also important for whoever the listing agent is or that realtor to really know that area too, to kind of expect those issues, you know?
Yeah, because there's a lot of times that, I mean, you're just not allowed to. I mean, when it comes to the bank, we really, for the most part, we don't care about the CO.
Unless title wants it, we don't.
Wants it.
It's the town.
Yeah.
It's a town, but there's other towns that, you know, we'll go ahead and I've noticed how like we'll close our transaction because it's not a requirement for us. And then the buyer comes back and said, hey, we never got the CO, or like this came up, the town came in here and they're charging us. Fine. Yeah, it's like, what's going on? You know, and it's like, hey, do you use an attorney?
Yeah, right. West New York is like that. They'll just hit you with a fine if you don't get the CO. A lot of the areas in Weehawken and Hoboken, that whole area, they're just, you know, that's what they do. It's also a moneymaker. They know people are coming in and out all the time.
Yeah, that's their way of just churn over. Yeah.
It's like New York, just to quickly switch to New York. Now they have CO requirements. New York never had that. Now they're making hundreds to thousands of dollars per transaction because there's always something wrong. And they're just nailing people in like the Rockland area, Orange.
But New York's just a disaster with like their documentation of all the housing in the state of New York to begin with. It's crazy.
It's funky.
Yeah.
It's funky.
In Jersey City, oddly, it's like fairly easy.
Is it?
Yeah, there's no CO. There's just a smoke cert.
And a lot of them are smoke certs only, right?
And I do the inspection, you know, smoke and fire, 10-year battery, 2A10 BC fire extinguisher, stupid. It's like ingrained in my head. Like, I hate it. But like, I'm like mounting fire extinguishers when I totally shouldn't
have 20
be.
of them in your house, just waiting for the next house.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
next investment.
Yeah. You know,
investment tips.
All these things just show again to the point where like, you need competent people to work with you. It's like, you know, look, it's expensive to buy now. And everyone wants to save money. And it's understandable. And everyone just starts questioning, do I need an agent? Do I need an attorney? Do I need to have a loan officer that knows what they're doing? You know, and it's like, yeah, I mean, you don't need to, but you're going to pay for it. I mean,
competent help, assistance, teamwork is worth more than anything. And to that point, you're buying, you know, even on low end, $400,000, $500,000 house. You're going to worry about $1,000 or $2,000. I mean, I hate to say, let's look at the big picture here. I understand costs are costs, and you know, it's not my money to spend, but it's just, you know, if you're going to buy something that's a investment for a long time,
you're penny pinching on the wrong stuff.
Exactly. It's the same thing with the interest rates. You know, like we have people come to us and be like, hey, I'm going to another place because they're giving me 0.125 less. Then we do the math, it comes out to what, like 20.
Yeah, I mean, how many times do we have? Me and Bill had somebody yesterday that he sent over to me. She was pre-approved with somebody else, and he's like, "All right, just talk to Scott before you do anything, before we throw this offer in." After talking to her for like 25 minutes, she's like, "I didn't know any of this stuff."
Yeah.
So the other thing too is like the knowledge that you get and the service is more valuable than the $300 less costs on a rate, or the eighth better on the interest rate, which we could probably do something about anyway. Right. So I think that it's super important for you to really be working with people that are actually going to take the time to truly guide you. If this is the largest purchase of your life, you need to know what you're getting into.
Yeah, because everyone has more or less the same rates.
It's all tied to the same thing.
It's all. I mean, nobody out there, like, you know, I think everyone in the industry knows, like, basically the mortgages end up at the same place for everyone. Yeah. So like the rates are going to be very, very similar to each other. The difference is going to come in the service that you get.
Or even if you could get a lower rate at, again, I'll use the Bank of Omaha as an example, right? But can they even close? Do they even do loans in New Jersey, right? If you're talking about a bank in Nebraska, what are they even capable of? You know, so do you really want to risk not being able to get a loan for potentially saving yourself $16 a month, $18 a month, whatever it is?
You get what you pay for,
basically,
in the business, man. You know, it's like when I get negotiated on like my price too, I use like an example of like contractors who renovate a $60,000 or $50,000 kitchen for $20,000.
It looks like it.
It looks like a $20,000
Yeah.
kitchen, and you're going to have to hire someone to do it and redo it for more money, and then you spent more money versus just going with the guy who was going to do the job right from the start.
Yeah. And I was going to ask too, Matt, your attorneys probably have the lowest fee out of everybody, and you're probably one of the ones that's getting the most pushback, right?
Yep.
He's not happy about it.
I mean, no. I mean, I would say yesterday we spoke to about 5 new clients and nobody, but occasionally people will, push back, and I hate to say it and hope I don't get yelled at. It's just, it's the $1 million transactions where somebody's like, can you take $200 off? And it's like, I'm buying $1 million house, you save $200, I guess. I mean, it's just kind of a bizarre thing because we are the lowest people on the totem pole. When you look at the CD or Alta, our fees tend to be the lowest by far. So it's just kind of, it leaves a bad taste in our mouth, just, full transparency when somebody tries to do that, because then it's like, you're not valuing, would you want somebody to do that to you at your job?
But again, almost
Especially
like
when it's a low fee.
an attorney's almost like insurance though, right? Where it's like, hey, if the transaction goes very smooth, with all due respect, you didn't have to work all that hard on that transaction because it was super smooth. But if it hits the fan, right, who are we all leaning on to say, hey, listen, get him, Matt,
Yeah.
So basically you're paying to hopefully not have to use Matt,
I mean, I had a deal where we had a situation with a tank pull, and the sellers cheaped out, and they hired a company that did not do the right thing, hit a water main, massive damage everywhere. And the seller's like, well, we don't want to cover the cost. And my client had to get a plumber. And they ended up, I got him to give half. So they went halves on it, which my client was happy with. The other attorney said, you've never been a pig. We've worked a lot together. Don't be a pig. This is fair. Do what's fair. Don't try to overgrab. So that's where it's good to have an attorney versus just doing it on your own, because again, back to the relationships. If somebody knows you're not going to try to squeeze them, they'll work with you.
Fair.
Yeah, no. I mean, the same thing for loans, like I'll say this, doesn't matter what anybody tells you when they give you that pre-approval. Like anybody can come out there and tell you, hey, we're going to be able to give you a loan, right? And then all of a sudden something comes up, or like they don't answer the phone, or nothing, nothing's moving. Because the reality is that the loan doesn't close until it closes. So sometimes, people just go ahead and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get a way better rate, or I'm going to save on closing costs. And then that person just completely disappears or doesn't answer the phone, or then there's an issue and it's like, oh yeah, I don't know, you deal with it.
You guys are the most important aspect because you're the money. I mean, you truly, at the end of the day, the money is the most important thing. So when you have a lender who just completely ghosts everybody, both sides, it's really infuriating.
Yeah, you can kind of still operate without the realtor. Not that I would just ghost anybody,
Sure.
but without the money.
But if you haven't heard from him in a week or so, it's not uncommon.
You could do it without the attorney. Theoretically, you have 2 people say, hey, I want to buy your house, I want to sell. Sure, let's just make this work. But if there's no money there, then none of it works.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's how it used to be probably. Is this, hey, I want to buy my neighbor's house. Okay, I'm going to go to the bank.
Yeah. Well, the worst part too is, I mean, I was talking to Bill about it yesterday. If you see a pre-approval from Rocket Mortgage, you run for the hills, right? Because 9 out of 10 times, they probably went online, didn't even talk to anybody. They're like, my income is this, my credit is this. Like, cool, generated pre-approval.
And then you get a call from someone from like Tennessee.
Right.
And
And he's like, hey, actually what we sent, we need to take that back because you put that in and that's all incorrect.
You lied.
Yes, not all income is the same.
No, not
not
at all.
all income is the same. You could be making $1 million a year, but it doesn't mean that we get
If your
to
costs
use
are
it.
1.2, you're in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. So as we're finishing this episode, I just want to ask all of you. So like, what is one advice that you have for like first-time home buyer or somebody trying to buy that dream home? What's the one thing that you would recommend them?
I would say be open, have a vision. Don't keep walking into the same wall over and over, whether you're looking at things unrealistically from a price point perspective, or you're willing to do some work to the property, put your own stamp on things, versus being in the thick of it with the rest of the competition. Just try to think a little bit differently and explore all your options.
Yeah.
Nice.
Now, Matt, I think you mentioned it, but what is the big no-no that you say, hey, listen, you're going into this transaction, you just went into contract. What should the client do? Like what should the client, what shouldn't they do, basically?
I mean, don't give away the house. Don't give away all of your contingencies, protect yourself, have a way to get out of the transaction so you can get out of the transaction if you have to do that, you know. Pick the right team. Picking the right realtor is extremely important in my opinion, because you guys are on the ground with them. You're with them all the time. You're showing them things. Pick a lender, you know, who is a human being and not some sort of AI automated, you know, thing, whatever it might be. But, you know, from my standpoint, protect yourself. Make sure you have your protections in place. You have a way to get out if you need to get out. God forbid something happens and you don't want to be stuck with this property.
Yeah. No, that goes to you. I mean,
What's my one advice for home buyers? Yeah, explore your programs, and be open and mindful to the different options that are out there. Little late in the conversation to be discussing cash to keys, but we have programs out there that really kind of could amplify your offer, make you stand out amongst the competition. So ask your lender, whoever it might be, to, you know, give you all the options and make a decision based on that.
you know, and I just ended saying, look, it takes a lot of us to complete a transaction. There is just so much work. There's like, I mean, right here you're seeing three parts. You know, there's
Title, inspector, surveyor, if you want to survey, multiple things.
yeah,
Plus
and
4 or 5 people in the loan office.
Yep.
and there's
And then the other side.
Yep.
and there's always an issue that can come up.
Yeah.
There's always an issue that maybe comes up from your side. You know, I've seen situations where a lot of times it's just small stuff.
Yep.
You know, a collection came in at the last minute or whatever it is. And having the right people that are committed to making sure that the transaction closes makes a huge difference. And I mean, I'm gonna say, but a lot of times having the people that are, you know, that are getting paid something of value makes a difference, because whoever is doing out there the transaction for pennies on the dollar, and that they're working with 20 different people in 1 week, you know, those people are just gonna basically, you're just a number.
Yeah, they don't
You're
care.
just like, hey, you know what? I have other big fish to fry, right? So make sure that you choose the right people. So
I like it.
with that said, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
having us.
And
Yeah.
we'll talk later.
Sounds good.
Cool.